Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? Look at this. Russia Moscow Stock Exchange officially suspends all trading in US dollars and euros. I told you this has been going on for years, this kind of crap happening to our country. And I said if I didn't know any better, the Democrats are purposely trying to destroy this country from the inside out. And people go, oh, come on. No, there's no come on. Their very actions and policies demonstrate this, especially with all the crap that they did to the US dollar and all the crap they used sanctions for. Let's go ahead and get into this because guess what? Russia, Saudi Arabia, and China are no longer using the US dollar. It was just a rumor, but now they put it into action. Before we get started, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I certainly do appreciate it. If you're thinking about buying gold and silver, head on over to our friends at Miles Franklin. The link will be down below in the description. When you make your purchase, make sure you use promo code Pimpy, P-I-M-P-Y, and they'll take care of you. If you have any additional questions, you can reach us over here at this phone number or over here at this particular email. For all orders over $10,000, reach out by email and we'll make sure that you get a great deal. So come on over to Miles Franklin and add to your precious metal inventory. If ever you should be buying gold and silver, now is the time. If you think that the dollar is going to continue to be as strong as it is after this move, you are sadly mistaken. Our entire way of life has just changed and you don't even know it yet. The dollar is about to die. And if you don't have it in the gold and silver, so is any of your savings, so is any of your fortunes. Right now, you better start investing into precious metals if you haven't already. And for those of you who have, congratulations, you just saved your ass. Saudi Arabia just ditched the US dollar. Saudi Arabia will now sell oil in multiple currencies, including the Chinese RMB, euros, the yen, the yuan, instead of exclusively in US dollars. That means all the countries that held on to US dollars to do trade no longer have to hold those dollars. So where do those dollars go? Well, they'll most likely come back in this direction. This past Sunday, Crown Prince bin Salman announced that he would not renew the contract, signaling a major change in the global financial landscape. This agreement, initiated after World War II, allowed the U.S. to control the world's energy, and its impact on standards of living for Americans is substantial. Told you it's about to change. The petrodollar system replaced gold as a standard of value and enabled the U.S. to maintain dominance over international trade. Those days are gone. Before we get all into that, let's see how the markets are responding to this. Look at this. I told you, how could crypto be a safe haven when a crisis appears? Now, I don't expect cryptos to continue to fall. I don't, but I'm just saying this is not a good sign. Bitcoin and all other cryptos are heading in the wrong direction, but let's keep an eye on it. Bitcoin's at $66,863. Ethereum's at $3,467. Solana is at $148.25. XRP, well, it's continuing to go down. It's at 48 cents. Dogecoin is at 14 cents. Cardano is at 42 cents. Shiba is at 4022. Avalanche at $31.82. Polkadot at $6.46. Chainlink's at $15.40. Polygon's at 61 cents. Terra Luna Classic looks like they added a zero at 4099. Satama in the green at 0.001148. Gold at $2,316.60, down $38 for the day. Silver at $29 per ounce. At least it got back up above 29. This gentleman is Cyrus Janssen. Let's listen to what he has to say about what's going on, because he covers a lot of territory that I'd like to get into. I will leave a link to his YouTube channel so you guys can come check him out. Let's get into this.
Everything is changing quickly for the US dollar, and this past week we've seen two major events that are going to completely change the future of our world. The first event was the announcement of a new BRICS payment system that will in fact challenge the status of the US dollar in international transactions.
That's called the unit. I spoke about that the other day. I told you guys this is the direction that they're most likely going to go into.
But what's even bigger is the shocking announcement that after a 50-year run, the agreement between the United States and Saudi Arabia to export oil exclusively in US dollars has officially ended on June 9th, 2024. And guess what? The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia has decided to not renew its partnership with the US and instead will open up the Saudis' lucrative oil trade to other countries and currencies.
That's why I was wondering about this so-called deal that Biden was going to make about the security of Saudi Arabia. I find it interesting that he would make all these agreements about protecting Saudi Arabia without including the protection of the US dollar.
Trust me, this is a massive blow to the status of the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. For the past 50 years, the US government has mandated that oil must be sold exclusively in US dollars, elevating the dollar status as the world's reserve currency. It was honestly one of the most lucrative decisions the US government has ever made. But a world in where America is the sole superpower is officially over. Earlier this week, Reuters reported that Saudi Arabia has now joined a China-led central bank digital currency project in what could be another step towards less of the world's oil trade being done in US dollars. Last week, US Congressman Thomas Macy made an appearance on Tucker Carlson's podcast and gave one of the most authentic breakdowns of what's happening with the US dollar. Trust me, there are very few politicians in Washington who are actually worth listening to, but Congressman Macy doesn't sugarcoat what is really happening.
And we can do that as long as they use our currency. But I think it's going to end at some point. They're going to quit using our dollars as reserve currency. I mean, I watched your interview with Putin. One of the things he said that is true is when we sanctioned him, before we sanctioned Russia, 70% of their transactions were in US dollars. And after the sanctions, it's less than 20% of their transactions are in US dollars.
Ironically, every time the US government introduces a new economic sanction, it moves the world one step closer to de-dollarization. To be honest, the exact same thing is happening with the US government's microchip battle against China. The US doesn't want China to have access to America's best microchips, so in turn, they sanction China. But what does China do as a result? They invest in their domestic microchip industry, and within a few years are quickly closing the innovation gap. The best thing to ever happen to the Chinese semiconductor industry was getting sanctioned by the US government. This forced China to change and get stronger. If the US government continues to weaponize the US dollar and enforce sanctions, it opens the door for much larger problems.
It's been one problem after another. Hell, we've seen this as Americans. I've been talking about this now since I had my YouTube channel, that the US dollar is going to die and that the United States is starting to be identified as a bully. And that's exactly what was going on. Other nations are tired of the way they're being treated by the United States. The United States has this do what we say or else kind of attitude, and it's starting to backfire on them. Before in the past, we make up excuses about the world leader, go in and do regime change, put somebody in there that's US friendly, and all is good. But that's not happening anymore.
And we're also sending a really clear signal, which is the dollar's not safe for you.
Right.
It's the reserve currency because it's a safe haven, because it's a stable country. It's the most stable country in the world, and we're not going to weaponize the dollar because that.
Are we truly a stable country? All this crap from the leftists, whether it's speared by China or Russia, it doesn't make a difference. The point is, we allowed this crap into our country. We never would have tolerated anything that we're going through right now in the 80s when I was growing up. It was so anti-communist, it's not even funny. But now we have active members in our Congress that are for socialism. Wow.
That would be shooting ourselves, but suddenly we are.
Of course, we can see this unfolding in real time as well. Earlier this week, Joe Biden and French President Macron reached an agreement to use the profits of frozen Russian assets to send additional funding to Ukraine. This is a dangerous move from the US and French governments because it not only violates international law, but it exposes how much at odds Western leaders are with their populations on Ukraine.
They just took Russia's money and now are deciding to use it to pay for Ukraine. You see, in their own countries, the citizens are getting pissed off about all the money being sent to Ukraine. So they can't keep asking the citizens, the taxpayers, to fund this war in Ukraine. And for many people, we don't believe what's going on is a war. The money's being funneled to something else. So instead, they just take the assets of Russia. Are you kidding me? The whole world is watching this, just so you understand. Watching how Europe and the United States is acting. And I wouldn't be friends with Macron. He's a coward, dude. So now you're about to get a lot of Trump-like candidates into office. And boy, they're being handed a huge mess of a country for all of them.
Last week, the Institute of Global Affairs published this groundbreaking study, which reveals 94% of Americans and 88% of Western Europeans believe that NATO member countries should push for a negotiated settlement for the war in Ukraine. Literally 9 out of 10 citizens in both Western Europe and the US want this war in Ukraine to end.
Well, not just that. Putin already said he's ready to do a ceasefire. Biden said, do not do a ceasefire. I don't agree to any ceasefire whatsoever. Keep pushing forward. Who the hell is Biden to be pushing war? The United States citizens don't want it. Russia doesn't want it. The Ukraine people don't want it. But yet, when a proposal came forward for a ceasefire, he told them to turn it down.
But our democratically elected officials, who are supposed to represent the people they serve, have other plans. Once again, this strategy will be a disaster for Western governments over.
This is exactly what I'm talking about, what he's saying. The people are not listening to the constituents. They're doing whatever the hell they want. Like I said, if I didn't know any better, I'd swear the Democrats are purposely going out of their way to destroy this country from the inside out with illegal immigration, pushing wars, sanctions, destroying the dollar. Look at their policies. In California, we had Gavin Newsom passing a law for $20 minimum wage. What do you think that's going to do to fast food restaurants? McDonald's is leaving California. They can't afford it. That's 10,000 jobs that they're taking with them. It looks like a war zone over here in California. It is terrible. People are barely getting by. All the projects that were funded for good things, now the funds have been taken away because of the huge deficit that Gavin Newsom has got us into. And this guy wants to be the president. Just keep that in mind.
For the long term.
But one of the things we recently did in Congress, we passed something called the Repo Act, where we said we're just going to seize all of Russia's sovereign assets in the United States. Well, it turns out a lot of that is treasury debt that they've agreed to buy so that they can hold dollars. When people see that we've seized their money that they gave us in exchange for these treasury notes, then other countries won't want to buy our debt.
As I mentioned before, the US government has weaponized the dollar to the point where other countries are watching and are concerned about the long-term effects of holding too much dollars. One of those countries is, of course, China, who was once the largest holder of US Treasury bonds. At its peak, China held over $1 trillion worth of Treasury bonds, but after the US launched a trade war against China, China has shifted their strategy. They no longer want to hold excessive amounts of US Treasury debt and are now offloading these debts in exchange for gold.
Do you see that? Lots of countries are doing that. They're turning to gold. Do as they do, not as they say.
Is not stupid, and it knows it could be a future victim of US sanctions itself.
You know, we probably wouldn't seize Great Britain's assets, but I could see us seizing China's assets.
Why would, I mean, that seems like theft. Just like take a country's assets. I mean, that belongs to the people of the country, right? It's not just Putin.
It is theft. Like, it's immoral, but even if you're okay with the amorality or immorality of it, it's short-sighted because eventually it'll catch up with us.
As you can see, this interview with Congressman Macy exposes a lot of truth, and it's why the other leading headline that BRICS is launching its own payment system was also significant this week. Here's a clip of Vladimir Putin speaking at the 2024 St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, which was held in Russia just last week. Pay attention to these words as he reveals the future of global trade.
По 23 год доля рубля в расчетах за российский экспорт выросла почти в 3 раза, до 39%. В 3 раза. Вместе с зарубежными партнерами будем наращивать применение национальных валют во внешнеторговых расчетах, повышать безопасность и эффективность таких операций. В том числе по линии БРИКС прорабатывается формирование независимой платежной системы, не подверженной политическому давлению, злоупотреблениями и внешнему санкционному вмешательству.
Now, if you listen exclusively to Western media, you probably will believe that Russia has been cut off from the outside world and that their economy is finished. But over 17,000 participants from over 130 countries attended this economic forum in Russia, as Putin laid out the future of the BRICS plan for global trade. Remarkably, just a few days after this economic summit, Russia held another meeting, which brought together the foreign ministers of each BRICS nation to outline the future goals of the organization. In total, there were 54 points addressed during this meeting, and I've read the entire report, so you don't have to. Here are the top 3 most important takeaways. Number 1, a new financial system. The BRICS organization wants to reform the entire global financial system to enhance the voice of developing nations and improve their access to international financial institutions.
Remember, the new SWIFT system was launched March of 2023. So much for that. It looks like there's a new system taking over that one.
Under the current US dollar system, every country is under the mercy of the US government, and this remains the biggest motivation for BRICS. Create an independent payment system that uses local currencies in trade and one that is free from US sanctions and outside political pressure. Number 2, Israel-Palestine. I want you to look at this map, which shows the countries who recognize Palestinian statehood. Around 88% of the world's population lives inside these green countries, and this map is almost identical to the countries who also support de-dollarization and the rise of BRICS. The war in Gaza has become the latest political issue separating BRICS and the United States. The US will of course always support Israel, and quite frankly has proved useless in ending the war in Gaza. But the BRICS alliance will fight back and pursue a path of statehood for Palestine, something that once again 88% of the world's population wants to see. And number 3, the end of US sanctions. Now the BRICS foreign ministers didn't specifically name the United States, but this point leaves no doubt as to who they were referring to. The ministers expressed concern about the use of unilateral coercive measures, which are incompatible with the principles of the Charter of the UN and produce negative effects on economic growth, trade, energy, health, and food security, notably in the developing world. What I want everyone to realize is that once you remove yourself from the Western media bubble and start to observe global trends, you'll notice the majority of the world are united in what they want. They want economic freedom, and this is why a shift away from the US dollar has begun. They want equal treatment, and this is why 88% of the world once again supports Palestinian statehood. Finally, they want a multipolar world where countries can do business and transact with as many nations as possible. Once again, this is why Saudi Arabia, who is also considering a full BRICS membership later this year, is opening up their oil trade to more countries and currencies around the world. But as you can see with these emerging trends, BRICS is gaining a lot of momentum. Pressure on the US dollar continues to increase, and these conditions will allow for a continued bull market for many industries, but especially the gold market.
Woo, did you hear that? A trending bull market, especially for gold. Look, I've been preaching this for years, that the death of the dollar is coming. Now, I remember having an interview with Kyle and his friend, and I said I didn't believe the BRICS would be successful because I don't know of any countries who are going to trust China and Russia to run this thing. But if this new financial system is the one I spoke about, called the unit, then it doesn't appear like any one country is in control of it. So countries will be free of sanctions. And I know there's people out there that believe that sanctions are good things. They're to keep bad countries from doing bad things, but that's not the case. The United States was using it to purposely go out of their way to destroy the economies of other countries. And that's what they did in a lot of cases. Just take a look at Iraq, Libya, Syria, Yemen, Iran, most all of the Middle East. None of this is done by accident. This is all planned. And now the United States is next. If you bully enough people, eventually at school, all the bullies are going to get together and they're going to attack the bully. And that's what appears to be happening. So it has started. Make no doubt about it. You're about to see the dollar drop in value. Our way of living is changed. If you don't have your money in the precious metals, you're going to be kicking yourself in the ass later on. If you believe that their safe haven is cryptocurrencies, more power to you. I pray for you people. But seriously, you need to have precious metals. Have it in your possession. Now is the time if you've been procrastinating. Reach out to Miles Franklin at 844-874-6797. Do something now before it's too late. Anyways, that's it for now. I'll get back at you later. I'm out.